Give him a hand.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jon Schlegel. I'm the founder and CEO of Optime Software, and we make classic casual games for smartphones. We've done over 120 million downloads to date. We've been in business since 2008, and we've done that in large part due to a very strong focus on user experience. So I wanted to talk to you today about some lessons learned we've had about how you can leverage user experience to be successful in the App Store. And the first slide is really primarily for developers. I've heard a lot of developers say, I can't afford a designer, so I'm just going to focus on the functionality of the application. And I think that's 100% the wrong approach. Even if you can't afford a designer, try your best. The first thing to do is go out and see if you can find a designer who will work for equity. They probably won't, but at least go out and try. Second thing is work with the resources that you've got. When I was designing the very first version of our very first app, Tic-Tac-Toe Free, I'm not a designer. I have no idea how to use Photoshop. I went in there and there were like a lot of layers and I just closed it because it was too complicated. But I was a management consultant in a former life, like one of the Bobs from Office Space. And so when you're in that job, you get to be really, really good at using that bastion of corporate drudgery known as PowerPoint. And I knew that you could use PowerPoint to create three-dimensional objects. So I set about using my mad PowerPoint skills to help create this first version of the app, and built out the first version of the Tic-Tac-Toe Free's user interface using PowerPoint. And it looks like this. See, it's a nice looking tic-tac-toe app, right? I could see a lot of the designers in the room cringing right now. But it's at least okay. And luckily it was 2008, so we were competing against apps that look kind of like this. And so when we launched this version of Tic-Tac-Toe in the App Store, it actually went to #1 on the App Store. And the takeaway from that was just a little bit of investment in user experience. Even if you can't afford a professional designer, can go a long way towards making your app successful if you're a developer. So work with what you've got. Hopefully you can find a developer or a designer who works for equity, but if not, you can always use PowerPoint. Which brings me to my second point. As soon as you can afford a designer, you should hire one. This is the best investment that you will ever make in your mobile application, hiring a professional designer. First thing we did as soon as Tic-Tac-Toe started generating any real revenue, we went out, we got a real designer who knew how to use Photoshop, and she took this version that I created in PowerPoint and turned it into this. It's a lot nicer. The version on the right has gone on to become one of the most downloaded applications on the App Store. It's done over 20 million downloads. It's been in the top 100 games for almost 4 years. And I don't think the application would have had anywhere near that much staying power if we had stuck with the version that I created in PowerPoint. Even though it's very nice, I think the one on the right is a little bit better than the one on the left. So as soon as you can afford a designer, hire a professional designer. It's a great investment. One great thing about hiring a designer is it makes it harder for people to copy you. It puts a little bit of a barrier to entry in front of people. So on the left here, we've got the actual version of Tic-Tac-Toe Free. And on the right is shameless ripoff of Tic-Tac-Toe Free by some other developer who clearly just looked at the screens of Tic-Tac-Toe Free and tried to copy them. But you can see that they didn't quite get all the design elements right. Like writing the menu options in different colors in Comic Sans is not the same as the stylized menu options that we've got there. So using a professional designer puts a little bit of a barrier to entry in front of people who might try to clone your app or who might try to just shamelessly rip it off by copying the screens directly. Next thing is both for developers and designers. A lot of people think about user experience and they think about just graphic design, right? Just what the user interface looks like. But one of the biggest components of user experience is really how users will use the app. Thinking about how users are going to use the app and what you can do to make it as easy as possible for users to use the app and to eliminate sources of frustration in the application. If you look at the Sudoku app I'm showing here, I don't think they put a lot of thought into how users are using the app. Because I'm about to go enter some notes into this square about what values I think it might have. And a huge keypad has popped up and is blocking the entire puzzle, so I can't see any of the values in the puzzle. So there's no way for me to enter any notes in there. So I don't even know if the creators of this game really ever played the game. I don't see how you could possibly play Sudoku like that. When we went to design our Sudoku app, we put a lot of thought into how users play Sudoku. And And we found is users spend a lot of time entering notes. They spend a lot of time entering values. They bounce back and forth between entering notes that are values they think a square could be and values that they know a square could be. A lot of applications have kind of a toggle button to let users do this. But users press this toggle button hundreds and hundreds of times when they're solving a puzzle. So when we came up with our Sudoku application, we just said, hey, we're going to give them 2 keypads, one for notes and one for values. By doing that, we took hundreds of keystrokes out of the process of solving a puzzle, making it a lot easier and more seamless for users to play Sudoku. We've had lots of users who have come to us and said, hey, I downloaded all the Sudoku apps that are out there, and yours was the easiest to use, so I decided to use it. So just that tiny little innovation there has helped us become one of the most successful Sudoku apps on the App Store. We've also done a few other things in Sudoku. We've got some row and column highlights to make it easy for users to see the numbers that are relevant. And we drop the opacity of any numbers that aren't relevant to the square that's currently selected. So those all just kind of help make the experience a little easier for users. You should always be looking for things that will make the experience easier. Next thing, when you're talking about user experience, it's not just graphics, and it's not just how the user uses the app. It's also sound design. Don't forget about sound design. If you've ever played Angry Birds, I know one of the things that a lot of people love about Angry Birds is the ambient sounds that the pigs make when you're trying to hit them with the birds, right? They're always sitting there oinking and making these strange noises, right? And it really kind of draws you into the game and makes the game more interesting. We started focusing on sound design about 2 years ago. And we've gotten some great feedback from our users since then. We've actually had a lot of people email us and ask where they can get copies of the soundtrack for the game and offer to buy copies of the soundtrack for the game. So it really kind of helps us see that the users really are enjoying the sound design that we put into the game and that it's making the experience better for them. Some of my favorite comments here, someone says the music is pretty dope on this game about the piano sonata in chess. Someone else says about the same thing, I play chess while waiting for my baby to fall asleep at night. The music's so mellow and beautiful, it helps my baby fall asleep. So it helps babies fall asleep, and it's super dope. Really awesome. And so I know a lot of people are not particularly good at sound design. If you're not good at sound design, just hire a professional sound designer. There are guys out there who can help you create the score for your game, and they'll also help you create sound effects that add more realism to the game and make the game more interesting for users to play. Next is really about both revenue and advertising. So we've got 3 ad creatives here for our game Checkers Free. If you look at these, do you think there would be a big difference in performance across these 3 creatives? I've been doing this for a while, and I look at these 3, and I think, there are some good things about them. There are some things that are not so good, but I wouldn't think there would be a huge difference in performance across these 3 creatives. But there are some subtle psychological cues in these creatives that actually make them perform very differently. We ran millions of impressions in A/B testing across these 3 creatives, and the results were amazing. The creative on the left has a click-through rate of 6%. The creative on the right has a click-through rate of 12%. That means if you're looking to drive a specific number of downloads, it takes twice as much money to drive them using the creative on the left than it does using the creative on the right. So when you're creating things that are part of the revenue funnel or that are going to be part of advertising that's used to drive downloads, think really, really hard about the design elements you're putting in them, and do whatever you can to performance test them and see the results empirically so that you can get a feel for which is going to perform better. Final thing is make the design team part of quality assurance. We've had designers catch a lot of issues on the back end that our developers and QA team never would have caught. So make the design team part of quality assurance and just close the loop there. Just to summarize, if you can afford a designer, hire one. If you can't afford a designer, just try your best. Maybe use Photoshop, throw some equity at a designer, see what happens. Focus on how users are going to use your app and how you can make it easier for them. Don't forget about the sound design element. Performance test any design element that's going to be involved in monetization or that's looking to drive download volume. And get the design team involved in QA and close the loop on the application. Thank you very much.